That's a good transition point into our final topic with the Bad Batch, which, as always, are predictions for next week. And so next week is episode 13. We have 4 more episodes left, and we're really getting in the end game. This is the last quarter of the show, and so we're getting there. And I think we've talked a lot about what Hauser's going to do, so I don't know if we necessarily need to speculate there. But we have obviously the final scene of this show or this episode was Crosshair requesting permission from Rampart to hunt down the Bad Batch. And so we're going to have that start in the next episode. We also we haven't seen Cad Bane or any other bounty hunters for 3 episodes. So we have that. We haven't seen the Kaminoans for 3 episodes. So we still have a lot of plot points there that are going to need to be expanded upon. I think the Bad Batch are still working for Sid technically, so we could see them go back there, and then Crosshair finally finds out where they're hiding and where they've been frequenting. Although I feel like if he was, this is the first time we've seen him actively try to hunt them down. So I think he'll find them relatively easily because they don't really keep a low profile. But I could see that happening for the next episode, and then they have kind of a fight there, and that really finishes off the Sid stuff and the mercenary life for them and transitions them more into the main plot again. I don't think we're going to get anything too significant next episode, but I do think next episode is going to push us towards the finale, which hopefully the finale kind of becomes a 2 or 3 episode arc where we continue to have like these last 2 episodes where we have endings that lead into the next episode directly, because I think those types of episodes keep people obviously more interested in the story. And so if we're going to set up for something big in this finale, and especially if it's a Boba Fett reveal or Hauser dying or any Omega getting captured and separated for the Bad Batch, and we have to wait for another year to see what happens there, I think we got to build to that and start focusing on not just the character moments within those plot points, but also which plot points are going to get us to ultimately where we're going. And so a quarter of the show left. We don't have much time to finish off some of this stuff. Some of this stuff will get saved for season 2. But what are your thoughts on what next episode's going to do and how we're going to get towards the finale of this season?
I think the A plot is going to definitely be Crosshair and the Bad Batch. I think they're going to interact immediately. I don't think it's going to be that long of a hunt for Crosshair. I mean, how that looks, I mean, I guess they could technically be found on the planet that they are with Sid on Mantel. Is it Ord Mantell?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I could see it happening there. I, I don't know if I can really see the Bad Batch simply abandoning their only lifestyle that provides for them money. I think they still need to have some sort of money to do whatever they want for their equipment, for fuel and all that. So, and they're not really part of a rebellion, that at this point, and they really kind of make it a point that they're not trying to help anyone do that, even if they're not exactly bystanders either. So I think we'll see a lot of. I mean, they still don't know anything about the brain chip stuff. They don't. There's no intention of saving Crosshair yet. So, as much as I want to say that this A plot in the next episode is just going to be Crosshair finds them and be big action and all that, I think next episode we'll still have some stuff with Hauser. I think we'll finally get back to how we were in the second episode of the season, where we saw the Kaminoan perspective and then the Bad Batch perspective and then back to the Kaminoan perspective. And then I think the Kaminoan Imperial perspective that we got will now also have Hauser, initially as he settles into his court martial or whatever they're planning on doing with him. I mean, I really don't know what to think for the next episode. I think this whole arc has definitely been like okay, shoot, there's like this whole another storyline. and it's been wrapped up for the most part. But that definitely threw us off our trajectory, right? I guess to some degree it does relate to the Raxus episode, like how this is about occupations on different planets. But I don't think they're gonna have another occupation episode. I think Bad Bats themselves are wary of going to another occupied planet like that, and it's becoming harder and harder. So yeah, I think no matter what, this is just gonna be a little bit less of a plot intensive and more action heavy episode. And whatever plot that does happen, I think will happen with the Kaminoans, Imperial, and now Hauser perspective. If it doesn't include that perspective right away, it has to do something with Nala Se and the bounty hunters. I think Fennec still has way too much mystery behind her compared to Cad Bane. I mean, I could be totally fine with Cad Bane not showing up immediately again, but I think Fennec has just too much almost incentive to show up because they're it's like she seems a little bit more keyed into whatever's going on in Camino. And her whole speech to Omega on that abandoned Kaminoan facility just only makes me consider like what's going to go on here. Like at some point, we're going to have to really understand more than just that she's an altered clone. We have to also understand what's coming next for the Kaminoans. Like you said, this timeline seems to be shifting pretty quickly. I'd say we're somewhere around I'd say 6 months at least after Revenge of the Sith. And the Empire was so quick about installing chain codes and everything. Now they're gonna have to, finally get to the deadline of like, okay, Camino, what do you got to make it worthwhile for us? All right. And now that we've got this whole factor of like, hey, some of the clones are also, you know, turning against the Empire and laying down their arms. What are you gonna do? Do you have a fix to this? Do you have a new version of this? What's going on? So that's all really freaking important. But then there's also the whole thing with Nala Se and the Prime Minister having different objectives for how they're gonna deal with the Empire. So Nala Se, with her own willingness to send Fennec to kill Tan Wee and everything, like there has to be something freakier and crazier. Honestly, I'm looking for the horror of the Clone Wars to finally come out. I want to see mutated, deranged, defective clones that are messed up, but are also killers and can do whatever that the Empire wants. But they're like the null commandos of Legends, where they just don't want to. I can really see Nala Se, because she's unable to get Omega, do something so desperate in creating some sort of monster from her cloning process. And I would like to see that. Because I think at some point or another, the Kaminoans fail themselves more than the Empire shuts them down. The Empire always takes the angle of like, look at what happened here. This is why we did this, right? Even if they themselves might have caused that angle to happen, even if they themselves created the situation, they're always looking for a public angle, and a public angle is not quite there outside of like, okay, a few clones dropped their weapons on Rylot. Doesn't mean much. Oh, if they say, wow, we found that the Kaminoans were creating these monsters and mixing species, um, to overrun the empire, even if it's not quite necessarily full contingency yet. I feel like something with the Kaminoan, you know, machinery has to change at the end of the season, and I want to say that it starts in the next episode.
I think that would be a really interesting angle if they decided to say, let's say the Empire finds out about what the Kaminoans are doing, and they're like, they destroy Camino. They just wipe it out. I would love to see the effects of that on the clones. Like that's
Oh yeah,
their only real home. I would love to see, because I think I've kind of pictured, especially because how much I love the original Battlefront 2. I'd love to see the fight be on Camino at the end of the show if the clones revolted. But at the same time, I think it would be really fascinating if Camino was just gone, and like
right,
all the
yeah,
buildings were gone, all the Kaminoans were killed, and they just basically were like homeless now. The clones, they have no home, and they're asked to be loyal to the people that just destroyed the only thing they are really connected to. I think that would be really interesting. I also
yeah,
think that it would be really nice to continue at least the Hauser storyline into, maybe we don't even need to necessarily see him, but at least the Rampart going to the Kaminoans and being like, hey, this clone just tried to, or just convinced a bunch of other clones to lay down their arms and not attack people we told them to attack. And I want to see that continue, because it would be a nice bridge from these last 2 episodes into those. It would start to make everything flow a little bit better into each other. I think it would also continue. I've said from episode 1 that I thought this season would end Crosshair's story. I don't think it's going to anymore. I think
Right,
I'd,
right.
and I think that's more from a personal standpoint too, of I want to see Crosshair deal with the stormtroopers. Like, I want to see if they start to move into that phase at the end of this season, and we get to see what the Kaminoans are doing with Omega, but also how they're basically phased out. The Kaminoans are phased out of all like Imperial military communications, and they're just like, nope, we're doing our own thing. Sorry. And they start building the stormtrooper army. We start to get that tension between the clones and the stormtroopers. I would really like to see Crosshair be kind of like the last clone there, and see how he deals with, basically, he's always been a loner, but how he's just the remnant of this past group. And so I'm starting to think that we're not going to get a Crosshair redemption as much as more of like a tragic death for him. And I think I would like to see him stay around for the next season, because I think he is kind of the main villainous face of, honestly, this whole show, and I don't see them killing him off in this season. But I do think if we transitioned from this episode into, hey, what's going on with Hauser? Why is he acting like this? That would also bring up possibly Lama Su's need for Omega, and subsequently more on Nala Se's plan, because we still have no idea what she wants Omega for. We know what Lama Su wants Omega for. So I think that could segue that into episode 14, and then maybe 15 and 16 are basically a 1 hour or 45-minute movie split into 2 parts, and we could get that true finale. So it would be nice if we start to reintroduce all the main players again, to say, okay, this is how we're going to finish off the show or this season, and this is what it's going to look like for your last couple episodes. And I
For
think that
sure.
that
Yeah,
would be the way that I would go with it.
it'd be a great angle, but are we gonna forget about Rex? I mean, well, I don't think this guy was just showing up in a a little poncho and being like, "Hey, what's up?" And then just he's gone. No way. I think Rex has to show up at some point. Maybe not next episode, but do we really think that this information about Hauser convincing other clones will just slip by? I think he's gonna pick up on it. I think he'll at some point the Empire knows that Rex is alive, right? Do they know him in Rebels as being alive before Rebels? I feel like they do,
I
right?
don't remember. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
because the I don't remember exactly what happens in the episode, but um, who's the Imperial who defects eventually to the rebels? Callus, right?
Alice.
Yeah, Callus talks to him, and the way he talks to him and Wolf and Gregor, it seems like, oh wow, you guys, your services to the Empire have been noted, or something like that. So I would think at some point the Empire will know about Rex. I don't think it'll be now. I think it's way too early for them to know about him now, but I
I
think
think. Sorry.
I mean, maybe he starts playing a bit more of like a fulcrum role, right? He starts sending information to these clones on discrete channels, like, hey, take out your chips. Like, look, here's some information. Look at fives. Look at all this and that, right? I mean, the only way to really bring him into the story outside of like a Kaminoan rebellion, I would say, is like, okay, he's here to like some of the free will clones. He's going to try to recruit them right away or something. And I don't know if that's. I think it's a little too early in the show, but just information about Hauser, I don't think he'll let that slide. I think he'll use it and angle it in a way that the greater majority of clones could hear it, other than just being like hidden and silent in Camino. Like I know I mentioned seeds being spread out from clones in Camino, leaving and seeing what happened to Hauser and his eventual death, I suppose, but that's still a little bit more controllable. Rex is the wild card because he's still dead technically. So I would maybe like to see him play more of like an informant role, like some he's like Deep Throat of Star Wars at this point, right? Instead of Watergate being broken out, the people finding out more and more, he's Deep Throat who's always known about this, and now he can combine it with this information of Hauser and give them the truth that we all have seen in season 7 and season 6 of Clone Wars.
Personally, I mean, I would love those angles. I don't think he's going to show back up in this season unless it's going to be to team up with the Bad Batch. Let's say if he wants Hauser and they want Omega and they're both on Camino, I could see them kind of joining forces, like kind of like a Mandalorian finale. Because yeah, I forgot about him honestly. With so many plots, there's so many there's so many things we got to wrap up.
Right, and we
He's
don't
just
we
starting.
have no idea what they're going to prioritize for like the
Right.
big final arc of this show, because it's like okay, like of this season at least, because they're like, okay, if we didn't have Rylot, we'd have a clear idea, but that just threw everything out of the window.
Yeah, because this whole our mid-season point was bounty hunters, Omega, and the Kaminoans. Our beginning of the show were stormtroopers and Omega and the Kaminoans. So Omega and the Kaminoans are the common denominator, but I'm sure, and then the bounty hunters kind of go along with the Kaminoans. I don't think they're ever going to be a huge part of this show. I just think they are part of this plot specifically and might segue into Boba Fett's reappearance. But yeah, Rex, I didn't think they would use him specifically this way, and I still think, like the Syndulas, he's going to obviously show back up in the show, but I think he's starting to feel more like a wink and a nod type character, like Cut, like the Syndulas, like Kanan. It's like, yeah, he's here and he's still around, just so you guys know, and we might bring him back at some point, but he's not in this show. And
Yeah,
I would be disappointed if he doesn't show back up for more than like the occasional, hey, I need your guys' help for this random mission type thing, which I don't want them to use Rex specifically like that, but I'm starting to get the feeling that that's where Rex is headed.
maybe, but we also do see him in his last moments with the Bad Batch contacting someone saying, "I'll meet you at the next like turn of this planet, like planetary rotation or whatever." It could be Ahsoka, but the Ahsoka novel kind of implies that they go their own ways, right? That they're not together. And I would think the Ahsoka novel taking place a year or so after, yeah, maybe there's a little margin that they could fit in, but I don't know. I know I see what you're saying, but it just doesn't feel like Rex to just wait it out, right? This guy, the way he talked about it with the Bad Batch, he seems like he wants to do something, right? Whereas Hunter's like, no, we can't. So yeah, maybe not this season, but he better not just be like, I'm a mercenary for a few years, like Bad Batch. That's not
Yeah.
Rex. That will never be Rex. Um, but will he show up? I guess. I mean, you can just tell from how we're talking about it. We both want him to fit in somehow, but we're not sure how he'll fit in while still, being worthy of his character.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing with all these so many plot points that have been set up in this show. I still do think Rex is going to be big in the second half of this whole show. Like when as we continue to get closer to more and more clones defecting and clones becoming the centerpiece of this story, I think he has to become part of this show more as a like an actual character. But since season 1 seems to be wrapping up with more of a centralized focused on the Omega character specifically, and maybe the Crosshair character as well, and that Bad Batch dynamic before it becomes like the Bad Batch and all the other clones. I think Rex, if he shows back up, it's going to be like a Bo-Katan team up at the end of Mandalorian season 2, where they either find him or he finds them, and they're like, we need to go save Hauser or Omega or whatever. But I think that's probably going to do it for episode 12 of the Bad Batch. Obviously, as I said, quarter of the show left. We're almost done. It's crazy how fast this has gone, especially for a 16 episode show, or only 4 left. And so episode 13 will be next week. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you didn't see it or you're watching the segments, we posted our comic reviews up on Wednesday. We reviewed War of the Bounty Hunters #2 and Dr. Aphra #12. Check those out. We also are posting new videos every Monday. This week was a tier list where I ranked 150 Star Wars characters, and it was fun. You should check it out. It was a lot of characters. So check those 2 videos out. Those were the new videos this week. We also have segments coming up tomorrow. If you would like to return to any of these conversations, and that's a little bit more of an easy way to do it. Or if you can't watch the show, obviously, the segments come out on Saturdays that let you watch the individual discussions that you specifically want to watch. Thanks so much for watching this segment of the Star Wars Lads podcast. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video by clicking the thumbs up button down below, and subscribe to our channel for new Star Wars content every single week. If you want to watch our full discussion, click the video on the left. Or if you want to check out one of our other awesome videos, click the video on the right.